Hello there, Facebook land. This is Schulenburg ISD's very first virtual town hall, and my name is Julie Motomura. So I want to start off telling you a little bit about how this process is going to work. If this goes well today, I absolutely plan to do these pretty frequently. I'm going to say every 6 or so weeks. You know what my hope is that you will be able to ask questions of me about school that you've not been able to ask before. Of course, we have a lot of big things going on right now, and a lot of those questions are focused on that. But as we move forward into the future, I think that the questions will change. You know, we've got a lot of good things going on here, a lot of upward mobility, a lot of moving up from here, and I just want to be able to share that with you. So, each time that we put out the virtual town hall notice, what we'll do is take questions. I'll take those questions for about a week. If you comment a question today, please don't expect that it's going to be answered. One of the reasons that I wanted to take questions ahead of time was to make sure that I could research and make sure I had accurate information for you. You know, I don't want to provide information for you that's halfway true or part of the way true, and then later you come back and say, well, that's not what you said on that Facebook Live. So I'm wanting to be real careful this time. Certainly, I will answer those questions later. I will either message you on Facebook Messenger, or I will go through school email. You know, we've got all your contact information. Either way, you're going to get your questions answered. I'm not going to go through and say, okay, number one question was, I'm just going to talk about some things. In all of the questions, there really were a lot of patterns. You know, we had several questions about the same thing. We have questions about me, questions about the district and instruction and test scores. There were questions about the bond and the tax rate. We had some special ed questions, and then we have some other questions that are in none of those categories, but I'll answer those as well. So I guess let's get started. My name clearly is Julie Motomura, and I am the superintendent of Schulenburg ISD. I started on April 25th. I come to you with 33 years of experience. One of the questions was, why did you pick Schulenburg? And I'll tell you, I did pick Schulenburg, and then Schulenburg picked me back. You know, when you're looking for a superintendent job, what you're doing is looking for a good fit. You know, you want to go to a place where you're like the people there, and your beliefs and the way that you feel about education matches up with the way the school does. When I interviewed the first time with the board, the questions that they asked me were very reflective of what I knew to be true about education. So when I left that day, I hoped that I would get a call back, and I did. After the second interview, which was really long, I hoped I would get another call, and I did. So on my way home that night, I got a phone call asking me if I would accept the position of superintendent. So for superintendent, they name you as a lone finalist. And that means there are 21 days in there where anybody can change their mind. Luckily, nobody changed their mind, so here I am. I've been in education for 33 years. I was a teacher for 19 years, and then I was a counselor, an assistant principal, a principal. Did some district level stuff in training sessions at a service center. My last job before I moved into this one was actually at the Region 5 Educational Service Center, which is in Southeast Texas. It's in Beaumont. You know, I always say, I know you can tell by my accent where I'm from. Well, that's why. I'm from deep Southeast Texas. I did federal program trainings. I traveled all over the state and did trainings with people and spoke at some conferences, and knew that I was ready to be a superintendent. So, of course, I was tickled to death when this job opened up. Personally, I'm married. Together we have 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl. 2 of our boys are married, and they have given us some grandbabies. So we have 3 grandbabies, Elliot, Andy, and River, and they are precious, so precious. But enough about me. Let's talk about the school. So as I mentioned, there were a lot of questions regarding instruction and test scores. Everybody knows that the test scores came out recently. Everybody got a good look at those in the newspaper. Certainly teachers have had an opportunity to look at how the kids scored from the previous year. But long before we even got the test scores, because I don't know if you even know this, test scores were actually released later this year because of a change in the way that the scores were calculated. So long before that, when I got here in April, I had already met with administrators, and we had talked and formulated a plan on how to move forward based on what had happened previously. They had test scores on their campuses. They had assessments that they had done that were beyond the STAR test that led them to believe that we may need to do some work. And we do need to do some work. I don't think anybody here is going to argue that point. Certainly what we looked at was our instruction. We looked at strategies that we're using in the classroom. We looked at types of curriculum we're using. The state of Texas tells us what to teach, and those are called TEKS. And those TEKS are actually embedded in the STAR test. So when someone says, I don't want you to teach the test, I think that's a terrible idea to teach the test, we're actually not teaching the test. What we're doing is teaching what the state of Texas tells us to teach. And what they tell us to teach links together from grade to grade. It shows us where to start and how far to go. And when we looked at the data, because I'm pretty data driven, which means looking at the numbers, looking at the black and white information, what we were able to do is formulate some thoughts and some ideas about how to move forward. One of the things that I have said over and over and over again, I think I've actually already said it during this virtual town hall, is only up from here. So we're looking at those numbers in the hopes of being able to make adjustments in our instruction. Campus principals are looking at specific data every few weeks. They're having meeting with their teachers. They're looking at the types of things that are being taught, how it's being taught, and then they're aligning that with what scores the kids made. Did they master it? And when I say master it, I mean, did they understand it? Did they get it? And by sitting down and actually looking at that information, what that gives us is the information we need to know how to move forward. So teachers have plans in place. Administrators are going in classrooms and offering support in any way that they can. We've even changed the way that we do lesson plans to ensure that we have the documentation that we need in order to know when we did something great. Okay, gosh, look at this lesson plan. This is the strategy I used, or I let the kids work in small groups. We're able to actually connect good results at the end, student understanding, with how it is we taught it and what it is that we taught. Progress in schools takes a little while. I'm not going to lie to you. One of the questions did deal with comparing our scores to those districts around us. And I'm not going to pretend like those districts around us aren't higher. I don't think there's any use in not being honest about it all. We saw those scores just like you did. We actually contacted those schools to find out some of the things that they were doing in hopes that we can implement some of those things here. I don't think anybody here ever wants to do poorly. And this year we're all working really, really hard to ensure that we're doing everything we can possibly do to move forward and to not only have good STAR scores, because that's our accountability, that's how the state scores us, but also to make sure that kids are ready to move on. Much of what we teach is not just STAR test stuff. These are things that you need in order to be able to move forward in life. Kids need to know how to read. You got to know how to read to survive in life. You got to know how to do math to survive in life. So a lot of the things that we're doing, we know have value outside of the STAR test, and we just believe that we are moving in the right direction. We're real excited about it. We're working real hard, and we're doing everything we can possibly do. Something else that we're doing to encourage student scores to increase and student understanding to increase is that we are making plans to have a lot more parental engagement than what we've had in the past. I mentioned that I worked at a service center before this, so one of the things that I know something about is parental engagement. What we want to do is provide an opportunity for you to come to the school and be a part of what it is that's going on. Not just attend extracurricular activities, but we want to do some things to help you feel welcome. And we also want to do some things to make sure that you know what's going on at school so that you know the kinds of things that your kids are learning. School is real different than it used to be. I mean, the joke is always, are you smarter than a fifth grader? And it's always talking about math. You just don't do math like you used to anymore. So we want to provide some opportunities for you to even see how it is that we're doing the math, what it is that it looks like. We want to do everything we can do to boost our students' understanding. And what we know for sure is that you being involved in their education is going to do that. So accountability rating. I know you know that the state assigns a letter grade to districts, A through F. Up until last week, we had been told that our accountability rating would be given to us on September 26th to schools. Schools would get it September 26th, and then TEA would release it, I guess, through a press release and to media on September 28th. Well, last week we got a notification that our commissioner, Mike Morath, has extended the date for us getting our accountability ratings. So no longer are we getting it on September 26th. It's now been bumped to the end of October. So please don't think we're trying to hide that information from you. As soon as we get it, we will put that out there for you to see. But again, regardless of what that score is, regardless of what that letter is, we are already moving forward and doing things that we know need to be done in order for our kids to learn. So please be assured we are working hard and, gosh, just expecting good things. We're expecting good things. The next piece of that, the next bit of questions were regarding very specific things about teachers. The questions were kind of linked with, this is your accountability, what kind of teachers are we getting, and how do our salaries match up? So when you pull salaries for our district and surrounding districts, what you find is that we're really pretty close. I mean, of course, there are some that are higher. We are right in there, though. You know, the thing about school is that everybody wishes that they could pay more. And when I talk about the bond in a minute, I want to explain a little bit about where teacher salaries come from as opposed to construction and the tax increase or the tax change for a bond. I want you to be able to understand that a little more clearly. Are we keeping it affordable for teachers to be here? Are we doing everything we can do? You know, one of the things that we did this year was when our teachers came back, when our staff came back, everybody actually, what they got was called a Welcome Back Shorthorn stipend. It was a bonus. It was encouragement. It was, we are so glad that you're back and we hope that you're willing to stay. You know, the thing about the teachers here is they realize that the student population in this district is worth staying for. You know, we've got really, really good kids. We've got kids who are sweet and who are respectful and who want to learn. We have a community that is pretty supportive of the school. So while we know that money is critically important and we want to do everything we can do to increase our salary scale, and believe me, we look at it all the time, one of the things that we know for sure is that our teachers appreciate the student population that we have and who it is that our district is. They know that that makes us special. There actually is a special session in October of the legislature. I know you have been seeing for months and months and months that the state was going to give teachers a raise. So there was supposed to be a decision made a long time ago about that, but there is another legislative session in October, and supposedly teacher salaries are going to be discussed. You know, we hope they are, because we believe that teachers need a raise, and we hope that the state is going to help us with that. So certainly as soon as that information is readily available, I will share that, or we will share that with you too, so that you know what that looks like. You know, no promises have been made by the legislature, but we certainly hope that they recognize the difficult jobs that our teachers have these days and are able to help us pay them more. There are also some special education questions. I know that many of you are aware of our co-op building and what has happened there. So let me just give you the story on that. Several weeks ago, we got to school one morning and our special ed director contacted our maintenance director, who then contacted me. When they went into the building, and she had been there at 6 p.m. the night before, when they went into the building, there was a distinct shift in the building. And when I say shift, I mean like it was leaning left. The doors on the left-hand side of the building were slamming shut because of the tilt. There were some ceiling tiles that had fallen. When you looked at the outside of the building, you could see a crack in the brick. Inside, there were cracks in the floor. It was very clear that something had happened. We just didn't know what that was. Now, the lucky thing was that at the beginning of this school year, we had already established classrooms for our students who had classes in that building. We had established their classrooms in the campuses. So we have a secondary and an elementary. That's where they were spending their academic time already. So for us to just make sure that they were there even more than they had been before was not that big of a deal. So that was really good timing on that. The other piece was that they have what they called an apartment, which was where they learned skills in life, like cooking and doing laundry and so on and so forth. And because of the facilities that we already have in place here, of course we're able to continue doing those things with those students. So they're not missing out on anything that they were getting before. They're just doing it in a different location. As far as fixing the building goes and knowing what's wrong, our insurance company, we have insurance just like you have on your home. Our insurance company is first sent out a structural engineer to look at it, and her thoughts were that it was water related somehow. So she wasn't sure if it was going to be drought related or that there was a leak somewhere, but nonetheless believes that it's somehow water related. At this point in time, we have had people come out and look. We are now waiting for a plumber to come in who is going to dig deep down into the ground and find those pipes and see whether or not there's a leak, to try to determine how to move forward. Beyond that, there's just not a lot of information to offer. We don't know what's going to happen, but we certainly will keep you updated on that. But be assured, again, those students are absolutely being cared for and taken care of in every way. Another question had to do with the district developing a pilot program for some of our kiddos who have disabilities to transition into life or jobs after they graduate. So this is a very, very new program. We do have something that we're working on. It is through Bluebonnet. Miss Rachel Robertson, who is our special ed director, can certainly give you more information about that. But just a quick rundown, the services and what we will be offering for those students is going to be different on a student by student basis. We need to make sure that we're offering them exactly what they need, just as we do during the school day. So that program will look different for every single student. So again, if you have questions about that, please contact Miss Rachel Robertson, because she can speak specifically to you about your child. She is very excited about the program, and we think it's going to be something great for our kids. So I hope you will contact her and find out more. So now to transition into the bond. One of the first bond questions was, tell us about the process. What does that look like? How were the determinations made on what was going to be included? So it was a process. It was a big process, and it actually began long before I got here. So the school board, in investigating and looking around and having conversations with people at school and knowing what was going on facility-wise, realized that there were certainly many needs. So rather than just going by what it was that they were hearing, they actually hired an architectural firm to come in and do an assessment. And that assessment included literally an assessment of every single thing. It was looking at foundations, it was looking at sporting facilities, it was looking at buildings, it was looking at air conditioners, it was looking at all the things to determine what it was in the district that was the highest priority. From there, and then this too also happened before I got here, committees were formed, and those committees were made up of stakeholders in the district. So by stakeholders, that means anybody that has anything to do or anything really to say about what it is that's going on at the school. So there were some parents on the committees, there were community members who maybe were business owners, there were board members on the committees. When I got here, of course, I was able to serve on the committee as well. We had teachers and staff who dealt with those specific facilities. Like one of the needs we knew was going to be a band hall. So of course the band directors were on the committee that dealt with the band hall, because they would have the information that we needed in addition to the assessment to help us determine exactly how to move forward. So once those committees were formed and there was a lot of talking, basically what the board did was listen. They listened to what the architects had to say in determining what it was that the needs were in the district. They listened to what the parents had to say. They listened to what the teachers had to say. And from there, they had to make some pretty hard decisions. There were various pieces that were in need, but of course what happened is that it had to be prioritized. And in that prioritization, they listened to what people had to say. They looked at the assessment of the buildings from the architect to make sure that we were addressing the biggest, most serious issues that we had in the district. There are not any school buildings per se on this bond. I know people are saying, why aren't there any instructional facilities? Well, an instructional facility at a school actually can look like a variety of things. It doesn't just have to be an elementary or a secondary building. You know, our athletes have their class out on the football field. So that's actually an instructional place. The classrooms that we have in our Performing Arts Center, and I'll talk about that a good bit more in just a minute, those are instructional facilities. So just because it's not a part of a school building like an elementary or secondary building, please don't think that there is not instruction that is going to go on in those places. So once the board listened and they were able to assess and look and try to determine, then they were able to put together two propositions for the bond. Those propositions are Proposition A and a Proposition B. Proposition A is a Performing Arts Center. I think the big thing about the Performing Arts Center for the board, as well as the stakeholders who were on those committees, and certainly for me and the teachers as well, is that we wanted to provide something that could be used not just by the school, but by the community. You know, we've kind of been doing some research in trying to determine when the last time we had an auditorium was and when it was built. And my gosh, it's all so interesting, and you all probably know this way better than I do. You know, there was a gym that was built a long time ago. You know, our latest years would be maybe in the 30s. And the gym was then converted to an auditorium, and the reason that they knew that was because when you were on the stage of the auditorium, you could open a trap door and look down and actually see the gym floor. That's so interesting to me. And of course that building was here for a long time, and from what I understand, in 2012 it had to be torn down because it was not safe anymore. So at that point then, the school, as well as people in the community, started using something that the city had to offer. And at this point in time, that's not available for us because of some issues that have gone on there. So at this time, there's just not a place like that in this community. You know, we have people who are having dance recitals and they're having to go out of town. We have people who are having performances of many kinds. And if our cafeteria is not big enough, they have to go outside of Schulenburg. So in thinking about what the bond needed to contain, one of the biggest concerns was the board wanted to consider and think about and try to come up with ways that they could support this community. You know, I say this over and over and over again, but Schulenburg ISD is the heart of this little town. You know, when you're looking at little communities like this, the school is always the heart. And we recognize and realize that and want so much to help the community as much as we are helping our students. That helps the community, and that also helps us. So there's an auditorium. It's seating for 400. And within that same building, there is a band hall. You all know where our current band hall is. So when the architects did the assessment and when the committees met and talked about their needs, the band hall was one of the big ones. You know, the band hall is small. There are not rooms enough for all of the equipment. If you have been in there, you have seen that the equipment is lined up around the band hall because there's not enough room to tuck it away. The band hall in the Performing Arts Center also contains some practice rooms. You know, we have a new band director, and I'll tell you, he has already increased the number of our band students. So we anticipate that that is going to continue. So that would be a classroom or an instructional piece of the Performing Arts Center. There are also two other classrooms that are for instruction. One is a computer lab, and then one is going to be an art room. So what this Performing Arts Center would also do for us is hopefully allow us to offer some different classes. You know, we're limited as to what we can offer based on our space and the teachers that we have available. If we have a space, perhaps we can hire somebody to do those things. So we're excited about what that could mean for our students in moving forward. Now on the other side of the building, you will find a weight room. You know, our current weight room is beside the dressing room, over beside the coach's office. So there will be a weight room that looks out on the football field. The Performing Arts Center is actually located behind the elementary where the basketball goals are. So it kind of goes toward the football field. It's in that area. There will be an availability for community to get in through the front, which would be out toward the road. And then the weight room would be off to the side toward the football field. There also will be dressing rooms, boys and girls. just a building that has so many uses for not just the school, but also, again, for the community. So that's Proposition A. Proposition B, more needs that the district had. We all know that safety is a big concern. Everybody is concerned about safety and security. You know, the state is requiring us to do certain things for that, and one of the directions that many districts are going is perimeter fencing, is security fencing around the entire district. Our district is compact, and that works well for this. So in trying to determine what we could do to keep our students safe, the board decided to add in perimeter fencing to Proposition B. So that's the first piece, is fencing around the entire district. And I know when you hear fencing, you kind of think, oh gosh, what's that going to look like? Just know that they're very aware of the fact that we don't want this to look like a scary place. We just want this to look like a safe place. So the fencing that is toward the road and out toward, you know, where people would drive by is not going to be anything that is unattractive. It will be picket fencing that will keep us safe, but it also will enhance the look of the school. So that's the first big piece. And then the second part is our athletics. So remember that I explained to you that a football field is actually an instructional place, and it is. You know, that's not only where we practice football, but we also have a variety of things going on out there. So the football field is not going to be turfed. I know that was a question that many people had, and I'll tell you, as I say over and over again, the board is just very aware of what the community wants and needs, and did not want to put that out there. You know, they're trying to be conservative in what they're requesting as far as the bonds go, and they just did not feel like the time was right for turf. So we will continue having our grass field. The track will be extended to 8 lanes. Our track currently is not big enough to actually host any track events, and it also has cracks in it to the point that we are either running in very specific lanes to avoid those cracks, or we're not running on it at all. So that will be extended and made a little bit larger. Our current bleachers are not compliant in the way that they need to be. You know, if you look at them, you can see they're rusty, and some pieces of them look as if they may not even be safe. So visitor side as well as home side bleachers would be redone with this Proposition B. Then there is the tennis courts, 3 tennis courts. And of course all of this includes lighting, and there's parking that's included, and repair of some drives and some areas that we have around the football field and around some of the campuses that are that flood and have big cracks in them, and again are just not considered safe. The Performing Arts Center is Proposition A. Then all of this sports complex would be Proposition B. The final piece on the sports complex is redoing the current dressing rooms, and then that would be for our visitors. You know, now they have to get dressed for football games. They have to get dressed at the junior high gym and walk over. So that would be the visitors dressing area, and then also redoing the restroom area on that side as well. Also for compliance, to make sure that anybody who needs to use the restroom certainly can get in there. And again, that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff. You know, if you have been here, you have seen the shape that all of these things are in. The board was very cognizant of what it is that they wanted to include. So in looking at the greatest needs, in looking at what it was that we could provide for the community as well as the students, and in looking at what it was that our stakeholders were telling us was most important to them, that was how the determination was made of what to put on each of the propositions. You know, someone asked, why wasn't that co-op building put on there? Well, I'll tell you the truth. At the time, the co-op building was not one of the greatest needs. You know, when the assessment was done, the lean had not happened. The shift in the building had not happened yet. And of course, we have absolutely no way of knowing that that was going to happen. Based on the assessments and what the information that we had, the board made the best decision that they could make. We feel really good about it. We feel like these are things that will be beneficial to everybody, and you know, we are hoping that people will see what a big deal this would be, not only for the school and for the community. I think one of the questions that everybody has and everybody wants to talk about, and this is pretty significant as well, is what impact is this going to have on our tax rate? What will this look like for our taxes? So let me explain just a little bit about how it is that taxes are assessed, or how it is that they're paid, and how it is that you are taxed. So there are actually two pieces to the tax. There is, or to funding for schools. There's M&O and there's I&S. M&O is where your teacher salaries live. That is where it's called maintenance and operations, and operations of school is instruction. So staffing and the curriculum that we use and taking care of the stuff that we already have. That's that bucket. This other bucket is I&S, and that is only for new construction and debt. So when people ask, why didn't y'all just give the teachers a raise instead of asking for a bond? Those two things can't go together. Teacher salaries are coming out of this bucket over here, and new construction and debt is coming out of this one over here. The state tells us how to do that. They tell us what to pay and how to pay it. So those two things can't happen together. Those two things aren't the same thing. It sounds crazy, but the state did a compression of the M&O rate. They did a compression, so that means that they reduced it. They reduced it actually by 20 cents. That's big. They realized too that times are hard and that people are struggling, so they wanted to do something to help out with the tax rate. So they reduced that tax rate. So remember, this is M&O. They reduced that one. If both propositions pass, I&S is going to go up a little. It is going to go up a little. But because of this compression, and because of the fact that there is a proposition on the ballot for November that is for a $100,000 homestead exemption, those two things combined, even if both propositions pass, your taxes are still going down. I know it's hard to believe, but your taxes are still going down even if both propositions pass. So the question was, tell us about 65 and under. So that's 65 and under. Your taxes are going down if both propositions pass. Lynn Mahach is our business manager, and she has even said, if you have a question about what your taxes would be with both propositions passing, now that you've gotten your property values, and the school doesn't set property values. That's not our job to do. Someone else does that. But if you want to see exactly what your taxes would be, you can bring them up here and she will talk to you about it. She can walk you through it and you can see. One example I will give you is if we had a $100,000 home, the estimated taxes for both propositions passing would be $640 cheaper than last year's taxes. $150,000, $700 cheaper for the year. $200,000 home, approximately $759 cheaper. So both propositions passing, taxes are going down because of the compression by the state and the homestead exemption that's on the ballot that we believe is going to pass. So 65 and older, let's talk about them. If a 65 and older person has applied for the homestead exemption, their taxes are frozen. So even if both propositions pass, their taxes are not going up. So let me say that one more time. 65 and older, if they've applied for the homestead exemption for 65 and older, their taxes are frozen. They're not going up. So in both situations, under 65, taxes are going down because of the compression and because of the homestead exemption. 65 and up, if they've applied for the 65 and up homestead exemption, their taxes are frozen. They're not going up. We know that times are hard right now. We know that people are struggling. We know that people are hesitant about some of the things that we're talking about. One of the things that I think is real important to communicate is that when we look at how much this costs right now, if we pass another election cycle and aren't able to pass a bond, what that means is at least a 12% increase in the price. just from April to July, which is when we had to get bids for the jobs to kind of see where the number was going to be. And then when the board made the final decision, we had to get another evaluation and bids. Just from that short period of time, the prices increased tremendously. You know, our concern is that if we're not able to do it now, when are we going to be able to do it? We know that the need is there, and for the board and for the stakeholders who were on the committees, the decision was made that this was the right time. You know, and being very aware of the times and things that are going on, just wanting to make sure that we do it at the right time and we're including the right things, and we believe that the time is right. And we are certainly hoping for the support of the community. This would not only benefit the school, but it would benefit the community as well, because they'll be able to use the stuff. Moving forward from there, regarding the bond, there were questions about the designs of the different pieces that are contained within the bond. You know, certainly we want these facilities to be attractive. I was able to do a K-Time interview on Friday night, and one of the things that the interviewer said was, you know, Schulenburg ISD used to have the best of everything. We were the ones that had the auditorium, we were the ones that had the great football field, and we were the ones that had the great track. And he said, we don't anymore, but everybody around us does. And that's a true statement. That's a true statement. So we believe that, you know, we're wanting to build things that are attractive, that also serve the purpose. It is not so fancy that it's costing extra money, but it does look good. You know, certainly we want to put something out there that looks good, so this new stuff looks good, the new stuff that we hope to build. That's a lot of information about the bond. You know, we're going to be, the board and I will be visiting various organizations. We will be having a community meeting. We're also going to go door to door and visit with you. But if you have any questions about anything, I'm real easy to find. I'm real easy to find. So email me, call me, come see me, whatever it is. And also go see Miss Mahatch if you have a question about what your taxes would be. So moving forward from there, tax rates about our area as compared to other areas, we're all about the same. With the bond passing, it may make ours a little bit higher than some of our surrounding areas, but then again, those surrounding areas won't be getting new facilities. And I think that is about it for the bond. So just a couple of random questions, or questions that weren't categorized with any of those. One of them was, why don't we have MLK Day off? If you look at the calendar, what you will see is that the stock show is at the end of that week. And one of the things that we like to provide for our students is time off so that they can go do all the things that they love to do. So rather than be off at the beginning of the week, we just transition that to the end of the week. Another question was regarding lesson planning and how it is that works on the campuses. And I'm going to tell you that we have changed the way that we do the lesson plans, and certainly grades are input into the system, and parent portal information is available at your campus so that you can check and see what your child's grades are. And that's pretty much it. So I answered the questions that were asked. It was kind of fun. We will do it again. And thank you so much. You know, one of the things that I know for sure is that the school relies on the support of the community. And since I got here, I have felt very, very welcomed and very, very good about the relationship that we all have. And for those of you that I've not met yet, and for those of you that I've introduced myself to 5 or 6 times, I look forward to seeing you again, and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.